stop to really consider where your favorite t-shirt actually came from, or maybe what truly happens to it when you're, finally done wearing it?
It's a journey most of us rarely pause to reflect on, really. Yet the answers, well, they reveal a hidden world with pretty profound environmental and social implications.
That's exactly right. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the true cost of what we wear. Our mission is to sort of unpack the environmental and social impact of the global fashion industry, especially the rapid rise of what we call fast fashion.
Hmm.
We've pulled together quite a stack of sources, everything from industry reports, academic studies, NGO analyses, and even a really fascinating preliminary market survey focusing specifically on Southeast Asia.
Right. The goal here is to arm you, the listener, with some surprising facts and insights, things that might just reshape how you view your clothes.
Yeah, and also show how consumers, governments, and innovators around the world are trying to navigate us toward a more sustainable future.
So let's start with fast fashion. When we talk about it, what are we actually defining? It's essentially an approach, right, to design, creation, marketing, all emphasizing quick, cheap trends. It's a fundamental shift from the old seasonal fashion cycles.
And when we say quick, we mean really quick. Zara, for instance, famously aimed to get a garment from the design stage into a store in just 15 days.
Which was already groundbreaking. But, newer players like Shein have pushed that even further. We're talking completing the entire process in as little as 10 days.
Wow, 10 days. That's incredible.
It is. And this relentless speed, well, it's given rise to what people often call disposable fashion.
Right, because the trend cycles change so fast.
Exactly. Many items are worn maybe only once or twice before being discarded, often because, frankly, the quality is poor, they just don't last. This whole phenomenon has escalated into what we now call ultra-fast fashion.
And the sheer volume produced is just immense, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We're looking at an estimated 80 to 100 billion. That's billion with a B items of clothing consumed worldwide every single year.
Goodness. How does that compare to, say, the past?
Well, to put that in perspective, Americans alone have basically tripled the amount of new garments they buy since the 1960s. Tripled.
That's staggering. And what happens to all these clothes?
Yeah, that's the striking insight, isn't it? How little actually gets a second life. Approximately 85% of clothes consumed just in the United States end up in landfills.
85%.
Globally, we produce 92 million tons of textile waste annually. And if current trends continue, that's projected to hit something like 134 million tons by 2030.
It sounds like, this isn't just about us throwing things away. It points to a bigger issue.
It really does. It speaks to a fundamental flaw in the linear fashion model. It just doesn't account for the end-of-life stage. It creates this kind of built-in obsolescence that renders clothes almost worthless after just a few wears.
And recycling. That doesn't really solve it, does it?
Well, it helps a bit, but perhaps surprisingly little. Globally, only about 10% of old clothes are recycled at all. And here's the really stark part. Less than 1% of clothing waste is actually recycled into new clothes.
Less than 1%. So, okay, this extraordinary volume, what does it actually mean for our planet's health?
The environmental cost is often hidden, but it's truly vast. Let's start with greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay.
The fashion industry is responsible for somewhere between 2 and 10% of total global greenhouse gas emissions.
2 to 10%. How does that compare to other industries?
Well, to give you a sense of scale, as of 2015, its carbon footprint actually outweighed that of international flights and maritime shipping combined.
Wow. Combined. More than planes and ships put together. That's
Yeah,
truly striking.
it is.
So, given those shocking figures, are there particular stages of production that are the biggest culprits? Or is it kind of spread out?
The primary drivers tend to be the really energy-intensive production processes, especially polyester manufacturing, that's a big one, and also the dyeing and finishing stages. These steps just rely heavily on fossil fuels.
Okay, so energy is a huge factor. But what about water? I hear that's a big issue too.
A massive issue. Beyond carbon, the industry has an enormous appetite for water. It stands as the second largest consumer of water globally,
Second largest, yes.
using a staggering 93 billion cubic meters. That's about 20 trillion gallons per year,
20 trillion gallons.
which is 4% of all freshwater withdrawal worldwide.
Can you make that a bit more relatable? Like for an item of clothing?
Sure, think about this. Producing just one single cotton shirt or maybe a pair of Levi jeans, that can consume approximately 2,700 to 3,781 liters of water for just one item.
Thousands of liters for one shirt or a pair of jeans.
Exactly. And it's not just about consumption, it's also pollution. The industry is responsible for about 20% of global wastewater pollution,
20%.
largely from the dyeing and manufacturing chemicals that just leach into water sources. These chemicals affect aquatic ecosystems, obviously, but they can also potentially enter human food chains
How does that happen?
through a process called biomagnification. Basically, toxins build up in organisms as you go higher up the food chain.
Right, right. And it's not just what goes into the water at the factory, is it? It's also what comes out of our washing machines at home.
Yeah.
This brings us to microfibers.
Indeed. Microfiber pollution in our oceans, it's a significant issue. You see, synthetic fibers like polyester, nylon, acrylic, they now make up over 60% of global apparel purchases.
Over 60%.
Yeah. And these materials take hundreds of years to biodegrade. Now, here's a crucial insight. 35% of all microplastics found in the ocean actually originate from laundering these synthetic textiles.
35%. So every time we wash our, I don't know, yoga pants or a fleece jacket.
You're essentially releasing tiny plastic particles into the water system.
Mm-hmm.
How much are we talking about on a larger scale? Is it significant? It really adds up. U.S. and Canadian households alone release around 22 kilotons of these microfibers into wastewater annually. And a concerning amount, about 878 tons, remains untreated and gets released directly into the ocean.
And these end up where?
They've been detected in widely consumed fish and shellfish. It really illustrates their pervasive impact on the marine ecosystem and, well, potentially our own food supply.
Okay, so we've got air pollution, massive water use, water pollution, microplastics.
Yeah.
The impact isn't limited to water and air, though. Our land is suffering too, right? Could you tell us about land degradation and maybe deforestation linked to fashion?
Yeah, definitely. Let's take cotton. Even though it's a natural fiber, it's the most common non-food crop globally, and it is incredibly water intensive, as we mentioned.
Right.
But it also uses about a quarter of the world's insecticides and somewhere between 10 to 16% of pesticides annually. Some of these chemicals are known carcinogens.
Wow, a quarter of all insecticides.
Yep. And this heavy chemical use, it degrades soil quality over time, which often leads to expansion into new agricultural areas and the destruction of local habitats.
And what about other materials? Leather, for example.
Leather production contributes significantly too, especially bovine leather, cow leather. It's directly linked to deforestation, particularly in tropical regions, to clear land for large-scale cattle ranching.
So it really highlights the huge environmental footprint of our material choices, stretching way beyond just the factory floor.
Exactly. It's systemic.
Okay, so beyond the devastating environmental impact, there's a profound human cost too. When we start talking about social justice and fashion supply chains, yeah, it really hits home.
It really does. Human rights abuses are distressingly pervasive in the garment industry. It's widespread. We're talking about things like forced labor, child labor, excessively long working hours.
Things we hoped were in the past.
Exactly. But also notoriously low pay, repression of trade unions trying to organize workers, a real lack of job security, and often incredibly dangerous working conditions.
I think many people remember the Rana Plaza factory collapse in Bangladesh back in 2013.
Yes, a stark, tragic reminder of this reality. Over 1,100 workers died, and more than 2,500 were injured. That event just brutally exposed the systemic lack of social security for garment workers in these supply chains.
And more recently, the COVID-19 pandemic. How did that affect things?
Well, that's a critical observation. The pandemic further exposed these deep vulnerabilities. We saw widespread order cancellations by major brands, which basically cast millions of workers into economic precarity overnight. It highlighted just how fragile their livelihoods really are within this global system.
And it seems like it's largely a gender issue within the workforce itself, isn't it?
Yes, that's a very significant aspect. Approximately 80% of apparel globally is made by young women, typically aged between 18 and 24.
80% women.
And these women face disproportionately high risks of gender-based violence and sexual harassment in the workplace. Plus, it's estimated that maybe 2 in 5 women garment workers do not receive salaries equal to their male counterparts.
This all sounds incredibly complex to even begin to address. Why are these supply chains so opaque? Why is it so hard to fix?
It's a huge challenge. The global fashion industry relies on these incredibly complex, multi-layered supply chains. They're especially prevalent in Southeast Asia, largely due to the attraction of lower labor costs.
Right.
And this fragmentation, this layering, it makes accountability incredibly difficult. Large international brands are often quite alienated, geographically and contractually from the actual production processes, and that leads to weak enforcement of labor standards, making it really challenging to even identify, let alone rectify, abuses happening further down the chain.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of the pretty heavy challenges, environmental, social, but there is hope, right? There are efforts underway.
Yeah.
Tell us about the global push towards more sustainable fashion.
Absolutely. There's definitely a powerful momentum building, and a lot of it starts with shifting consumer behavior. We've seen, for instance, a really stark increase in Google searches for sustainable fashion just over the past decade. And things like hashtags, hashtag sustainable fashion, they're rapidly growing online, largely driven by younger generations, Gen Z and millennials.
That's interesting. A strong indicator of awareness. But are people actually willing to change their habits?
It seems so, definitely. Reports show that around 73% of global consumers say they're willing to change their consumption habits to reduce their environmental impact.
73% is quite high.
It is. And we're also seeing rising interest in specific sustainable alternatives. Like searches for vegan leather are up 69% and organic cotton up 23%.
Okay, so materials matter. What about the ethics? Does how a brand treats its employees truly factor into buying decisions?
It certainly seems to. There was a survey that revealed two-thirds of consumers would actually stop or significantly reduce shopping at a brand if they found out it didn't treat its employees fairly.
Two-thirds is a powerful motivator for brands.
Absolutely. And the pandemic also played an interesting role here. It led to a general decline in consumption, obviously, but it also seems to have made consumers more inclined to shop less overall, maybe be choosier, and also embrace things like reusing, upcycling, and mending clothes more.
That makes sense. It sounds like the industry and maybe governments are finally starting to catch up to this consumer shift.
They are, slowly but surely. The ethical fashion market, for example, reached about US $6.35 billion back in 2019, and it was growing at an impressive 8.7% annually even then.
Right.
And tools like the Higg Index, which helps companies measure their sustainability performance, show a consistent 15–19% year-on-year increase in companies implementing sustainability measures. So there's movement.
And it's not just individual companies. What's encouraging is the collaborative push we're seeing, these global initiatives.
Yes, that's key. For instance, the Global Fashion Agenda's Circular Fashion System commitment, it's been signed by 94 companies, which represent about 12.5% of the global market, and it aims to increase reuse and recycling. Then there's the UN Fashion Industry Charter for Climate Action. That brings together 43 industry leaders. Their goal is to collectively reduce aggregate greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030.
30% is ambitious. And are national governments stepping up too? Are we seeing actual laws change?
We are seeing some concrete actions. France, for example, announced a ban on burning unsold fashion items, a common practice previously.
Right, destroying stock.
Exactly. Germany introduced the Green Button, which is a governmental sustainability label to help consumers identify ethical products, and Germany is also establishing a due diligence law. This is significant because it will actually make companies legally liable for abuses discovered in their supply chains.
That raises an important question, doesn't it? Can we see more legal accountability, moving beyond just voluntary corporate social responsibility, the CSR stuff?
That's the hope. And maybe a precedent was set after the Rana Plaza disaster we mentioned. That tragedy led directly to the legally binding Bangladesh Accord on Fire and Building Safety. It was an agreement between global brands and labor unions, a critical step towards real accountability.
So legal frameworks are starting to emerge. And of course, we can't overlook the crucial role of NGOs and grassroots movements. They've been pushing for this for years.
Absolutely critical. They've been powerful catalysts for change. You have organizations like Redress in Hong Kong using really creative activism, like their 3% Mountain, a huge 6-meter-high pile of secondhand clothes representing just 3% of Hong Kong's daily textile waste. It's designed to raise public awareness and just spark conversation.
That's a powerful visual. What else are NGOs focusing on?
Well, you have foundational work from groups like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, really championing the whole concept of the circular economy, designing out waste and pollution from the start. Then there's Fashion Revolution, which campaigns tirelessly for a fashion industry that's clean, safe, fair, transparent, and accountable.
And protecting workers.
Yes, groups like the International Labor Organization, ILO, and the Worker Rights Consortium advocate constantly for labor rights and work to combat modern slavery conditions in the supply chain.
I appreciate how this isn't just a top-down push from governments or NGOs. We're seeing innovation bubble up from local communities too, right?
That's absolutely right. And it's really inspiring. You see designers in places like Helsinki focusing specifically on upcycling and zero waste design principles, or Somalian designer Nimco Adam using traditional African textiles and natural dyes,
Hmm.
reviving older, more sustainable
Yeah.
practices. And in China, there's Remake Hub, which creates new apparel entirely from recycled plastic. These local efforts often pilot ideas and pave the way for broader systemic change.
Speaking of regions leading the way, our sources really highlight Southeast Asia as a kind of hub of innovation and opportunity within this whole sustainability movement. What's the market potential looking like there?
It's huge. The ASEAN region, Southeast Asia, is projected to become the world's fourth largest economic collective, potentially a U.S. $4 trillion consumer market quite soon.
4 trillion.
Wow. And a key insight here is the consumer willingness we talked about earlier. Nielsen surveys show that 80% of Southeast Asian consumers are willing to pay more for sustainably sourced products. The figures are even higher in places like Vietnam, 86%, and the Philippines, 83%.
So this region, which has traditionally been a manufacturing powerhouse for fast fashion.
Exactly. It's now positioned to potentially become a global leader in sustainable consumption. It's driven by this unique blend, maybe, of traditional resourcefulness and a rapidly growing, ethically minded consumer base. People who seem to value sustainability as much as, or maybe even more than, just the latest fleeting trends.
And we even had access to that preliminary market survey focusing specifically on Singapore, right?
Yeah.
What did that reveal about local attitudes there?
Yeah, it offered some really nuanced insights. It found that while, okay, price and durability are still top factors for Singaporeans when buying clothes, environmental impact and ethical production still rate higher than current trends or even uniqueness.
That's interesting. Higher than trends.
Yes, and crucially, 63% of the respondents said they actively research a brand's sustainability practices before they buy.
So people are actually doing their homework. They're actively seeking out these options. Where are they finding sustainable products in Singapore?
Well, the survey found that peer-to-peer online shops like Carousel, which is huge there, and offline secondhand shops, plus small local boutiques, these are actually preferred over the big brand retailers when looking for sustainable purchases.
That makes sense. Maybe more trust or transparency.
Possibly. And here's another significant finding on willingness to pay. 91% of respondents are willing to pay more for sustainable options.
91%.
Yeah, and about half of those are open to paying 20, 50%, or even more. This really points to a clear economic incentive for brands to embrace sustainability seriously.
Definitely. And what specific sustainable values did Singaporeans prioritize?
Top priorities were things like sustainably sourced materials, fair wages for workers, transparency in the supply chain, and safe working conditions, the core ethical and environmental issues.
And it sounds like circular practices, reusing, recycling, are really gaining traction there specifically.
They really are. 7 out of 10 Singaporeans said they are open to upcycling, recycling, or swapping clothes. And there's this place, the Fashion Pulpit in Singapore, which is a clothes swapping platform. Between 2018 and 2020 alone, they successfully saved 75,000 fashion items from disposal just through clothes swaps.
75,000 items saved through swapping. That's impressive. Okay, now, to really appreciate the dynamism and the diversity of this region, let's maybe take a closer look at how different countries in Southeast Asia are navigating these challenges and seizing opportunities. Maybe starting with Thailand.
Sure. In Thailand, the government has an initiative called Thai-Style Solutions. It actively promotes local craft businesses using creative and, importantly, green design solutions. And things like clothing swaps are also gaining popularity, especially in Bangkok.
It's not all positive.
No, challenges persist. There are still significant issues with migrant worker exploitation, particularly in border towns. It highlights the complex social issues still at play, even alongside these positive developments.
Okay. Shifting gears to Indonesia.
Yeah.
What's their situation like, especially considering those water pollution issues you mentioned earlier?
You're right. Indonesia faces significant water pollution from its large textile industry. But the government has responded, at least in part, by shutting down some of the most polluting facilities. And eco-labels are emerging as a way for consumers to try and identify greener choices.
Are brands responding too?
Yes, brands there are embracing things like organic cotton and reviving traditional, less impactful methods. The challenge, though, lies in managing price sensitivity among consumers. Sustainable options often cost more initially, and also addressing the ever-present risk of greenwashing. For example, promoting wood-based fibers like rayon or viscose without fully addressing the potential deforestation impacts related to sourcing the wood pulp.
Ah, right, the hidden impacts. Now, the Philippines seems to have a unique angle with its local textile history and culture.
Indeed, the country is actively exploring local sustainable fabrics like piña, which is made from pineapple leaf fibers.
Pineapple fibers, interesting.
Yeah. And also abaca, which is a type of banana fiber, and even coconut fibers. But what's particularly interesting culturally is the widespread uke-uke. That's the term for the huge secondhand clothing market.
Right, thrift stores, basically.
Exactly. Now, while some of it is linked to illicit imports of used clothing, it also offers massive opportunities for upcycling existing garments. You have local designers like Denuo who are actively taking these UK finds and recirculating them into new desirable fashion pieces.
Turning waste into fashion.
Wow.
What about a smaller country like Lao PDR?
PDR has a really significant opportunity, particularly for its small to medium enterprises or SMEs. They can focus on traditional weaving techniques and using locally sourced sustainable materials. This could really drive economic growth, reduce reliance on imported fibers, and crucially, preserve valuable cultural heritage at the same time.
Makes sense. Moving on to Malaysia. What's happening there?
In Malaysia, the government has an initiative called SVE, which actively promotes sustainable practices in various industries, including textiles. And even Kuala Lumpur Fashion Week has focused themes like design to sustain. NGOs are also doing important work there to preserve traditional crafts like songket weaving, connecting local artisans to wider markets and helping ensure these skills endure.
In Cambodia. We mentioned the labor rights issues earlier. What's the progress towards sustainability and fair labor looking like now?
Cambodia still faces serious labor rights challenges, that's undeniable. But there are initiatives like Better Factories Cambodia, which is run by the ILO, working directly inside factories to improve working conditions. And you also see grassroots projects like engaging homeless families in designing fashion from recycled waste materials.
Wow.
Plus, brands like Tonlé and Dorsu are really leading by example, focusing on using remnant materials, reusing offcuts, and creating durable, seasonless garments, the antithesis of fast fashion. It shows change happening at multiple levels.
Okay, and finally, let's touch on Vietnam.
Vietnam's government has a national green growth strategy, which emphasizes things like eco-labeling and industry transparency. Many Vietnamese SMEs are finding they actually have a competitive advantage by adopting sustainable fashion practices and cleaner production methods. However, challenges definitely remain, particularly around worker rights in some areas and ongoing issues with chemical pollution from dyeing and finishing. So, progress, but still work to do.
It really paints a picture of a region in transition, lots of challenges, but also incredible innovation. So as we look to the path forward globally, what are the biggest hurdles and maybe trade-offs the industry faces in this whole sustainability journey?
Well, a critical need, arguably the biggest one, is a much wider shift towards genuinely circular fashion economies. That means prioritizing the reuse and upcycling of existing materials before making new ones. Done right, this could actually add billions to the world economy.
But there's a social dimension to that shift too.
Absolutely crucial. We must ensure what's called a just transition. This means making sure that workers in lower and middle income countries who currently depend on the fast fashion manufacturing model aren't disproportionately harmed by this shift. We have to avoid solutions that just end up exacerbating poverty elsewhere.
That's a really important point, and making sustainable fashion itself accessible is key too, isn't it? It often feels like it can't just be a luxury niche.
That's exactly right. It's a crucial point. We need to figure out how to drive down the costs so it's not just a high-priced option available only to some. Ideally, maybe luxury brands could lead the way, use their influence to make sustainable practices more mainstream and aspirational. This also ties into the broader slowdown movement people talk about, reducing the sheer number of trends and seasons pushed out each year to deliberately curb overconsumption and waste. This slowing down could be particularly important in regions like Southeast Asia, actually, to help protect those existing cultural traditions of recycling, mending, and local crafts we discussed.
Yeah, preventing the erosion of sustainable practices that already exist. Now, beyond just putting a green label on things, you mentioned greenwashing, there seems to be a real demand for genuine accountability, doesn't there?
Absolutely. The sources we looked at really advocate for moving beyond purely voluntary corporate social responsibility, or CSR. The call is for more institutionalized frameworks, maybe even legal accountability, to properly protect workers' rights and ensure genuine environmental commitments are met.
So how do we monitor that? How do we know who's genuine?
Well, transparency initiatives are key. Things like the Fashion Transparency Index, which ranks brands on how much they disclose about their supply chains, and robust, credible eco-labels are also crucial tools. They help monitor progress, distinguish true sustainable efforts from superficial greenwashing, and ultimately build that vital consumer trust.
And for us, the consumers, it often comes down to education, doesn't it? Knowing what to look for.
Yes, definitely. Empowering consumers through education is vital. Maybe even integrating understanding the fashion industry's impacts into school curricula.
Mhm.
Helping people discern genuine, sustainable practices from, misleading marketing fluff.
Right.
And reputable brands can play a key role here too, by sharing transparent information, maybe emotionally engaging stories, but always backed by solid data, really connecting consumers to the full life cycle and the real impact of their clothing choices.
Well, we've certainly journeyed through the complex and, yeah, often hidden world of fashion today, uncovering its immense environmental and social footprint, but also, thankfully, revealing the incredible momentum for change that seems to be building across the globe. And with Southeast Asia really emerging as a significant frontier for both innovation and conscious consumption.
Hopefully you, the listener, now have a deeper understanding of the forces at play here. The challenges we face, yes, but also the really inspiring solutions that are taking root. And this knowledge, well, it empowers you to look beyond just the label on the garment and make choices that truly align with your own values.
It makes you think. What if the most impactful fashion statement you could make wasn't actually about the latest trend you just acquired, but rather, what if it was about the story behind your clothes, the ethical journey of their materials, the fair treatment of the people who made them, and the conscious decision you make to wear them, repair them, maybe pass them on, and circulate them for as long as possible?
So we invite you to consider the full life cycle of your clothes from beginning to end, and maybe explore the growing number of sustainable options available out there, whether it's local boutiques, artisan crafts, innovative swapping platforms, or just great secondhand finds.
One,